Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
Dennis Lang.
No, and Dennis Ling, just Dennis Ling.
Dennis Lang.
What do I ask why?
Oh, and Dennis Lang.
I mean, okay, at least now you're being grammatically correct.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was a reason, like you were doing all that kind of, it's not even like I'm Joe Friday. It's just like Dennis Ling.
Dennis Lang.
Uh-huh. Anyway, I don't know what this is relevant to or not.
That's what ruthless people do.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so as Dennis has given it away, tonight's movie is Ruthless People,
Yep.
a black comedy from 1985-ish, I think, 86 maybe. And I've never seen this movie. In fact, I also kind of confuse it a little bit with a movie called Other People's Money, I think. And I'm not sure if I confuse the two movies, which I also have not seen, which is also on our list. But I know there was a whole spate of films in the 1980s that starred Bette Midler. And there was a whole spate of films in the 1980s that starred Danny DeVito. And sometimes they overlap and sometimes they don't. And I believe this one actually has the two of them in it. And I'm not sure if Other People's Money has Danny DeVito and Bette Midler or just Danny DeVito or what. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure this one, Ruthless People, is a comedy starring Danny DeVito and Bette Midler as people who, like a married couple who hate each other. Basically like the Lockhorns. Oh my God, they actually kind of look like the Lockhorns now that I say that. Yeah. I didn't actually mean that, but you know what? I think I'm right. As a longtime reader of Comics Curmudgeon, joshreads.com, yeah, you know what? I just realized that's what that comic strip is. It's Ruthless People.
Yeah, I would read it when I was a kid, but I was like, this isn't funny.
You know what? It's not, but sometimes it is.
Yeah, I guess.
Like no, it's not, but whatever. You know what? I'm somebody who still reads the daily comics.
It was like Heathcliff back then, and
Yeah.
Heathcliff was. I can't speak. Heathcliff was not funny back then.
No,
It's
but
not what it is now.
it is. Yeah. Now Heathcliff, I think we all know, is a surrealist masterpiece.
Yeah.
And the Lockhorns, maybe not so much, but I still read it because there's something wrong with me. But yes, Ruthless People. So as far as I know, yeah, this is a black comedy about a married couple who do not like each other. Now, that also sounds like another movie that is on our list, War of the Roses, which, if I remember correctly, is directed by Danny DeVito.
A little bit like Money Pit.
Oh, see, now Money Pit, that's a movie we watched early in the pandemic
Yeah.
that I did not, so we can't cover it for the show because we did watch it. It's a shame. There are a number of films that we covered early in the pandemic just because we had nothing to do and I had never seen them, and now we can't cover them for the show. So Midnight Run, which would have been amazing.
Yep.
Money Pit
It's
is
like
another.
all stuff like just before we did the show.
I know it drives me. Yeah, it is literally right before the idea of the show came into our heads. By which I mean it was suggested to me by John Solomon.
But I guess you were kind of in an 80s vibe at the time.
Well, I don't know, Dennis. I mean, everybody was still in lockdown. There was nothing to do. And I was like, here's a bunch of movies I've never seen. You know what it was? Frequent guest Alana had done like a little watch party watching some films from the 80s that she had grown up with and other people had grown up with.
Tank Girl was one.
Well, Tank Girl's from the 90s. But and Journey and Natty Gann, I think, was one. And Return to Oz. So, yeah, it was that sort of, let's watch the films from our childhood. And I was like, I didn't watch those films from my childhood. I was watching, I don't know, Shirley Temple movies. I was watching movies from like the 40s and not from the 80s. So this was all born out of people revisiting their childhood in the 80s and me going, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Ruthless People is one of those movies. Bette Midler was a big star in the 80s. She did a lot. Oh, another one that actually, again, we can't cover for the show was Big Business. That was her and Lily Tomlin.
Yeah.
And that's something that I watched early in the pandemic because I never saw it as a kid, but friends had. So, yeah, this is Bette Midler. The last time we saw her was down out in Beverly Hills. I have a feeling, no, I don't have a feeling, I have a knowledge that Richard Dreyfuss is a different vibe from Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
I don't dislike Richard Dreyfuss on screen.
Right.
But he's like an aggravating presence in a way.
Yeah.
In a way, and here's the thing: like I enjoy the movies that he's in. I mean, look, I love Jaws. We watched Close Encounters recently. Oh my God, it's an amazing film. Loved it. In the right circumstances, he's great. And actually, I thought he worked really well in Down at Beverly Hills. But
you can't like him all the way.
no. And here's the weird thing: because now you've got Danny DeVito instead, right?
Yeah.
Danny DeVito plays despicable people, but I like him.
Yeah.
And I know that's a weird thing. But I can't help but like him. And I don't know entirely why that is. I don't know if it's because I sense his innate New Jerseyness, or if it's just that there's something about black comedy that I really like. Danny DeVito on screen, I like watching him. Like my parents watched Taxi. Louis De Palma is an early memory for whatever reason. I do remember watching that as a kid. And then, you know, in the 80s, he made a lot of movies. So he was in Romancing the Stone, and he did, I know he made like a bunch of other films that we are going to cover. And, you know, he directed Matilda, which was a kind of a big deal when I was about the right age. And of course, he's on It's Always Sunny, and he is amazing.
I think part of it is like that he's in this industry surrounded by like all these good-looking people, and he's like, yeah, look at these bozos.
Well, I think that might be part of it.
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of whatever it is about Bill Murray.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
You know, like this kind of like
I don't care.
slob,
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
You know, the guy's not a dope.
No.
He has like a really interesting career as a film director. You know, the films that he chooses to do. He is like in my favorite Batman movie. Arguably my favorite superhero movie. Batman Returns. He is the Penguin.
I think he's your favorite character in that movie too.
He is. Are you kidding me? Oswald Cobblepot? Absolutely. Yeah. Without question. Although Michelle Pfeiffer is extremely close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like their entire thing is
yeah.
I know, right? So yeah, Danny DeVito. He's always sort of been there in the back of my mind as like one of these actors. And you know, you brought up Bill Murray, and it's not the same thing, but it's not dissimilar.
Right.
If I'm going to watch a movie where two people are going to be horrible to each other, it's going to be kind of fun if it's Danny DeVito and Bette Midler.
Yeah.
Bette Midler is another one. I don't know. I probably did bring up on the other episode about Down Out in Beverly Hills, but like I had a babysitter whose daughters would show us movies that we were probably too young to watch. The 80s were an interesting time. But I remember this one daughter of my babysitter, she would just watch like Bette Midler concert films. So I grew up watching like the Divine Miss M and stuff. And like, I haven't gone back and watched those in 40 years. And I do wonder, like, did it do anything to my brain? I don't know. There's something about being big and bold and over the top in that kind of acting that I always like. It's not that you don't see it anymore, but I feel like people aren't used to it anymore. You know, we just saw Killers of the Flower Moon, and I've seen people kind of getting upset with Brendan Fraser's performance.
Huh.
Because they're like, why is he chewing the scenery in this? And I'm like, because he's playing the lawyer.
Yeah, that's what lawyers do.
That's what lawyers do. But I feel like people aren't used to it. Like it's almost as if, I don't want to say mumblecore took over, but there's a certain smallness of acting that took over in the last 20 years that is boring.
Yeah.
And one thing I like going back to the 80s is people are big and bold and over the top in a way that is conscious and measured and works. And that's what I'm hoping to get from this. Big, bold, over the top, two people who are probably trying to get divorced and killing each other. I assume that's what's happening. So that's the thing. I don't actually know what this movie is. I just know it's about a couple who don't like each other.
Do
So,
you know who made it?
I don't know.
That's the only thing I know.
Oh, okay. So I don't know who
won't
made it.
say.
I don't know who the director is. I don't know who the screenwriter is. I don't know who the producer is. Is anybody who made the movie somebody I already brought up?
No.
Okay. So are you
So
talking?
it's not Scorsese.
Now that I know, that I'm aware of. There is one Scorsese film we will eventually, I think, cover for this show. I've never seen The Color of Money.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But no, I realize he did not make this movie.
Okay.
But has the person who made this, have we watched any of their other films?
I think so. I mean, we've seen. I forget if we've seen it for the podcast,
But we've seen it otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. So so whoever was the director, I've seen their work before.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you think both of them die? Either of them die?
No, I don't. I bet neither of them actually die.
You think there's another woman or another man?
Oh, I'm sure. So, you just triggered something in my mind because, okay, so Ruthless people, right?
Yeah.
I assume it's about two people getting divorced or want to get divorced. One of my favorite movies is called The Awful Truth, and it's from the 1930s, and it's one of those movies of divorce and remarriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it stars Cary Grant and Irene Dunne. And I love this movie. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And it's all about these two people who are getting divorced and sabotaging each other's future relationships because they're actually secretly still in love with each other, but they kind of don't want to admit to each other that they're kind of in love with each other. So that, because they're cheating on each other the whole time. And so they want to get a divorce. And so it's all about like sabotaging their relationships. My Girl Friday is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Cary Grant was great at that role.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of movies like that. The movies of divorce and remarriage. I mean, the Philadelphia Story is probably like considered the pinnacle of the genre. Although I'm again still more of a His Girl Friday person.
Is Danny DeVito the '80s Cary Grant?
Yes.
Can you imagine if you just started casting him in like Cary Grant roles?
That would be amazing. I would love to see that. Who's funnier, actually? There's a good question.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
Do they get divorced? Do they kill each other at the end? Or is this sort of one of those things where they end up back together at the end? Is this like the 1980s version of the divorce film? Or do they end up like killing each other? Boy, now that would be bold.
Do you think there's a car chase?
It is the 80s. I think there's a car chase.
Sex scene.
If there is a sex scene, it is comedic at best. Something over the top, kind of like, again, Down Out in Beverly Hills.
Right.
The scene between Bette Midler and Nick Nolte. So,
is there an animal, like a pet,
oh,
that maybe they fight over or something?
Oh, that's a good one. I bet there's a dog.
Yeah.
I bet they fight over a dog.
Are they rich? Do you know? If
I think they're
rich?
very rich. I bet they're super rich. I bet this is one of those 1980s films which is all about like opulence.
Yeah.
The reason they're so angry and they're fighting is because of the money.
Huh. Okay.
They're ruthless. Who's
Yeah.
more ruthless than the rich?
The poor.
No, hey, if they were so ruthless, they'd be rich.
I guess so.
Oh, you know what's funny about this?
What?
I didn't even think about this until now. We're watching this the day before our anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
That was not planned.
No.
Not planned at all. But yeah, that puts a little interesting spin on this.
Yeah. And as we learned last episode, we're married.
Yeah, that's right. 17 years.
Sheesh.
17 years tomorrow, man.
Yeah.
So, want to go break up a marriage?
Yeah, sure.
There's a line towards the end of this movie where they say that they've been married, 15 years? And we're recording this on the night of our 17th anniversary.
Yep.
So, exactly when are you going to have me kidnapped? Here's the thing. There's no money.
Well, I could have you kidnapped, and as payment, I'll say I'll give you one cat.
The Ransom of Red Cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie is essentially the O. Henry story, The Ransom of Red Chief.
Do you know that story?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, O. Henry, famous American short story writer.
Yeah.
Steeped in irony and all that. And he wrote a story that ran in I think it was the Saturday Evening Post, where it's the same premise of an obnoxious brat gets kidnapped and the father's not going to pay the ransom because he knows that at some point these kidnappers are going to get so sick of this kid, they're going to pay him to take the kid off their hands, which is what happens in the story. This is a darker version of that, shall we say. But I don't know. For some reason, I always think about the Ransom of Red Chief. It's one of those short stories that, it's I don't know. It's a fun idea.
The writer claims he didn't model it after that. He modeled it after Patty Hearst.
Like that's nonsense. Here's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't consciously sitting there and saying, I'm going to write a version of the Ransom of Red Chief. I'm sure he wasn't consciously thinking that. However, that's definitely what this is.
Okay.
We haven't covered a lot of straight comedies on this show. We've done action comedies like Beverly Hills Cop. We've done horror comedies, a lot of horror comedies. We've done a couple recently. Like romantic comedies like Moonstruck or Say Anything.
Also, Romancing the Stone.
Romancing the Stone. They're getting into like the nexus of action, romance, and comedy. Yeah. But we haven't done. We've done a few social satires like Down Out in Beverly Hills, which came out the same year and also has Bette Midler. Our first episode, 9 to 5, is sort of a working class social comedy, whatever. This is a farce, however. Yeah. We haven't done a lot of farces. I don't think we've done any actual straight farces. Our next episode is going to be the day after. And I kind of think we should have reversed it. I didn't think about it at the time, but oh my God, I wish we had reversed the order because this is one of the funniest movies we've actually ever covered.
Right. Yeah.
Honest to God, so we watched this with my mother actually. And I was kind of heartened by, she was laughing as hard as we were at this. And I mean, it's a black comedy and DeVito is despicable and Bette Midler is obnoxious and they are both so much fun to watch on screen. This was so good.
Like if I have any complaint, I feel like there should have been more Bette Midler. It didn't really feel like she was as terrible as, I don't know.
I love the idea that I don't think she was that obnoxious, and I'm thinking, keep thinking that, hun. It makes me look pretty good. No, I actually kind of like Bette Midler in this. It's funny because she's not. I can see how when you first encounter her as the kidnapped victim, why she might seem obnoxious, because she can be mean and she can be cutting. But here's the thing. As the film goes on and she is living with her kidnappers and they get to know each other, she's actually super encouraging towards them. And I love that the final reveal of this film is that she ends up becoming friends with them and they're going to go off and start like a fashion line. DeVito, terrible person in this. Whether or not she's actually obnoxious or anything, we're still introduced to her through his lens. Yeah. Whether it's accurate or not to where the film starts, I love that that's not how the film really ends. You had mentioned going into this that I have seen who made this film. I've seen their work before. Right. And it turns out it's Abrams Zucker. Yep. Who made, Airplane.
Top Secret,
which we're going to cover on the show, actually. We haven't done Top Secret. But The Naked Gun, they created Police Squad. Of the films of theirs that I have seen, they're very funny, right? Yeah. You showed me Airplane, and you have a tendency to overplay how funny something is going to be. And I remember you saw Team America?
Yeah,
and
Team America,
the
funniest movie ever made.
Yeah, you came home and you were like, that was the funniest movie that I've ever seen. This is going to be amazing. Yeah. And I went and saw it, and there were things that were certainly amusing.
You like the cat?
My God. Okay, the scene where they release the Panthers to tear them apart, and it's like a couple of kittens. That is a legitimately, I busted a gut laughing at that. That is a very funny visual. But overall, I was like...
It's not Kung Pao the Way of the Fist. I get it. Have you ever seen that? Did I show that to you?
Is that the, martial arts movie? Yeah. Here's...
It's the bad dubbing one.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the one that's funny, and I always confuse it with the guy who made the one about like the thumb
Nope,
people.
same.
No, this
It's
is
the same. Yeah.
okay. No. Then what? No, I saw something else. I saw a different one that was like an actual martial arts movie that was really good. The movie you're thinking of, I have no interest in. I'm thinking of a different movie.
No. We saw it and we liked it. The one
Nope,
I'm-
that's
yeah.
not what happened. I know what one you're thinking of. You're thinking of the guy who makes the thumb movies.
No. I'm talking about like, what was it, Kung Fu Hustle or Kung
Fu Hustle is what I'm thinking
Yeah,
of. Yes.
exactly.
Now that's a good movie.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
that
good
was
movie.
CGI, and my problem with these films is that I'll hyper focus on one scene that I think is hilarious.
So when you showed me Airplane, I went into that assuming there's going to be like one funny scene and then just a whole lot of, not dissimilar to how I experienced Johnny Dangerously.
Right.
Here's the thing. Airplane, incredibly funny.
Yeah.
Now, this movie, it's the same guys, surprisingly more grounded.
Yeah.
Like, this is more of just a straight up, it's a farce, but it's not that Abrams Zucker style of gag in the same way. This is a much more...
Well, this was the last Zucker and Abrams film because they're like, oh, because they didn't write it.
Right.
So if they're like, oh, if we're not going to be writing films, then we might as well not be working together.
See, now, is that true? Because I would have thought they made The Naked Gun together.
I don't know.
Yeah, like I have no idea what the timeline is there.
So you're just disagreeing with Wikipedia?
I'm saying I
The
don't.
source of information?
I mean, compared to the rest of the internet, Wikipedia is pretty good, but that's not saying a whole lot. What I've seen of the whole Zaz filmography, it's very silly. This is not quite that. This is much closer to, we brought up Down Out in Beverly Hills, and that is not quite the same because that has certain scenes, like when they go to Venice Beach and he's hanging out with the homeless, and he has this kind of heart-to-heart scene with Richard Dreyfuss. That's a little bit of a different thing, where that's a more sentimental film. There's no sentiment in this film, which I love. I love that this is a completely unsentimental dark comedy. There are times where you're just kind of like, oh, is that person actually going to be dead? And then once in a while somebody actually is dead in this. So this is not what I was expecting at all when I saw that it was a Zucker Brothers film. When I saw that flash on the screen, I'm like, okay, it's gonna be ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, but it's more grounded than that. They could have easily made this in like 1932.
Right.
And honestly, you wouldn't have to changed anything except the swearing and the one shot of breasts when the police chief is with the prostitute.
Yeah.
Although you could easily have made that scene just slightly different, right? Pre-code.
But I liked Danny DeVito just has no redeeming qualities at all.
Yeah, is this his most despicable character? I mean, even like Oswald Cobblepot, you feel a little something for.
Yeah, I don't know if it's his most despicable, because he's played a lot of despicable characters.
I mean, that is
but-
his thing. We open the film with him describing to his mistress how he's going to kill his wife.
Yeah.
Because he's been waiting to get her money. He waited for his father-in-law to die in order to get the father-in-law's money. And the guy just hung on forever. And he just wouldn't die. And like the father was finally dead. And he hates his wife. And so now he's just like, if he can just bump off the wife, he'll inherit all of the money. Which is a hell of a way to be introduced to a character.
The interesting thing about him, though, is that through most of it, he doesn't seem to hate his wife. Like, he doesn't seem to say, like, oh, she's terrible. He hates her dog, and he hates her father.
I wonder if he hates the design of the house.
Yeah.
But no, I kind of got the feeling he just hates her and, that they are incompatible. Look, it's not a deep film.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's just enough to set up that, like, they don't like each other and he would like to see her killed.
Yeah.
So that he can get the money. However, he runs into a little snag. So he describes to the mistress, I'm going to drive her to this one cliff area in Los Angeles, which is full of cliffs, right? Strangle her and throw her out the car door and leave her to be, I don't know, eaten by coyotes or whatever. And so the mistress is like, oh, that, you know what? I'm going to blackmail him with this information.
With my dummy.
With her dummy. Because she's a side piece with a side piece.
Yeah.
Played by Bill Pullman in his first film. He's like a perfect himbo.
Yeah.
He's got like this bleach blonde hair, but with all of the dark, like real hair that you can see very easily. So it's like a very poorly done, like intentionally for the film, poorly done hair.
He has a goldfish named Crockett and Tubbs.
Well, why wouldn't you? I would. He has the vibe of somebody who wandered in maybe from a Coen Brothers film, actually. Yeah. He is a very dumb criminal. He feels like the brother to Brad Pitt's character in Burn After Reading.
Yeah. He's
just that dumb. So he's the side piece to the side piece, and they conspire to blackmail him when he goes to murder his wife. Unfortunately for all three of them, you have a whole other couple played by Judge Reinhold and Helen Slater. He is a stereo salesman, and she was, I guess, like a fashion designer who had her designs ripped off by Danny DeVito. And so they want revenge because essentially he stole her ideas. He is known as the Spandex Miniskirt King of Los Angeles.
Yeah. And Judge is the one that says we have to be ruthless.
Yes. His whole thing is we have to be ruthless and get revenge on them. And so their idea is we're going to kidnap Bette Midler and hold her for ransom that, essentially just for revenge. I don't even think like they have like much of a plan, to be honest.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's not like we're going to ransom her into becoming partners or anything like that. I don't think they think it through very far. So while Danny DeVito is trying to set up to kill her, and the other people are trying to set up to, videotape him killing her, she just gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
And they hide her in their little bungalow somewhere in Los Angeles. And she's the worst roommate you've ever had.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, she's kidnapped.
She's being kidnapped.
She's insulting and she's rude and she throws food at them, but she's being kidnapped. Like, the fact that, like, they haven't killed her, I understand why she's being bold. You may as well, because these people are obviously not going to do anything to her.
I still feel like there should have been a kidnapping scene where she's on the phone being terrible to somebody.
You want to see evidence that she's actually a bad person.
Yeah, because we only know her as a kidnapped person.
That's true.
And she fights back immediately. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And
I think it's fine that we don't really see her before the kidnapping, because here's the thing. We want to like her towards the end of the film. Now, when they go to videotape the murder, because there's no actual person to murder, that doesn't happen. Instead, what they come across is an older guy. Well, I say older. He's got white hair.
Have we pointed out just how dumb Bill Pullman is?
Oh my God, he's the dumbest. I love how stupid he is in this. Now, is he the one who talks about like them escaping to Haiti? And she has to explain, no, it's Tahiti.
Yeah.
Very different place.
That was the first clue.
Yeah. I feel like that was him. God, he's so good at being dumb in this. I really do love it. Actually, one thing I really like is you get like these different sense of like class and social standing in this movie. And it doesn't it's not hitting you over the head the way like Down Out in Beverly Hills does. But obviously DeVito and Midler are supposed to be this very rich couple. Yeah. And they live in this insane mansion that I can't wait to talk about in a second. And then the couple, the Reinhold,
Helen Slater
and Helen Slater couple, they just live in like kind of a normal, middle class to lower middle class house. Like, this is LA, but it's LA in the 80s. So, it's like a normal house. Like, first of all, they have a basement. I don't know. Do people have basements in California? Is that even a thing?
No, not usually.
Yeah. So it's a little weird that they have a basement, but
the script called for it.
The script absolutely called for it. But, I'm watching this and like, I haven't spent much time in California. I've been there like twice in my life.
Our second movie with a basement.
Well, look, I'm sure other movies we watch have had basements, but it's the second.
2 in a row.
2 in a row, though. And again, holding somebody prisoner.
Yeah.
So they have like kind of a normal bungalow. And then like you brought up Bill Pullman, like the mistress, she lives, I guess, in an apartment. We don't really spend time there. He lives in a trailer. There's a couple of ways that you can live in a trailer. You can live in a mobile home because like it's affordable, right?
Yeah.
That's just like a house that is cheaply built, but like it's a house. I wish they were better made, but you know, it is a house. This guy, on the other hand, is definitely living in just like an old trailer. You get the sense of if he has to, he can pick up and leave.
Right.
Now, there's something kind of appealing about that, to be honest. Like, there is a part of my brain that's always like, I don't know, man, that's maybe not a bad way to live.
So you like the Brad Pitt, was it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood life?
I don't know, man. I do. I kind of get it, you know? Like, if you got to skedaddle, have wheels.
Maybe he's a neighbor.
I'm just saying the snails have it right.
Yeah.
But yeah, can we talk a second about the mansion that
Sure.
they live in? Okay.
Cocaine decor.
It is the most,
Yeah.
like, the most I've seen. Like, I remember we made that joke in The Long Good Friday, and it fit there. Absolutely. And I know we brought it up in like some other episode, but this house, the entire interior of this mansion is what they call Memphis design or Memphis-Milano.
Yeah.
And it is what you think of as the 1980s. In fact, the opening sequence of this movie is like a bit of animation, and it's like what they used to do in the 80s, where it'd be like, here's something that's animated and it's just like all the names on screen and whatnot,
Yeah.
and here's like some music playing. It's like a Mick Jagger song. Totally red 1980s, geometric shapes and squiggles, crazy colors.
Didn't later Cosby shows have something like this?
Yeah, probably, but not as extreme.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of stuff like looked like this. Like Saved by the Bell
Yeah.
has that kind of design. It's like the ultimate, like, kind of, when you think of the 1980s, you have a version of the Memphis design in your head.
Yeah.
But this is taken to its most extreme, so that every piece of furniture inside this house is that type of style.
It's
They're-
all primary colors and like white walls. It's like
White
supposed
walls.
to be art.
Yeah.
Everything is art. Like chairs,
It's just a lot
lamps.
of, like, everything is geometric shapes.
Yeah.
Right?
Nothing looks functional at all. It just looks.
Nothing looks functional. Nothing has ornamentation, really.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is Danny DeVito, after a rough day, sits down on this one chair and leans back, and it's the most uncomfortable thing. Like, it just doesn't look like a human's supposed to lean on this thing.
And that's kind of how I feel about a
Yeah.
lot of the design from that era. It's just like, this isn't actually made for people. This is made for art. But, it's funny because I think when I was a kid at the time, like, if you just went over to somebody's house in the 1980s, nobody's house looked like this. All the furniture was probably from the 70s. There was a lot of brown. There was a lot of leftover avocado. Like, nobody had this kind of a stylish house when I was growing up.
Did this ever take hold in Philly anywhere?
I never saw this except on television when I was
Because
growing up.
we had my house in Orland. Like, we had like orange, brown.
Exactly. Like, this is not a house like a normal person. Like, here's the thing. If you, in the same film, when you look at the inside of the kidnapper's house, that's a normal house.
Yeah.
That just looks like a normal, middle class, whatever house. Like
Wood paneling.
Wood paneling, whatever. Like, that looks so much more like a house that you could walk into a house, and that kind of looks what it looks like now, to be honest.
Yeah.
The mansion is so high concept 1980 design. It's interesting because it like instantly dates when this film is made.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that's like, at least that looks like something, right?
Yeah.
At least that looks interesting. My mom was looking through a catalog the other day, women's clothing and stuff, and she was complaining that like all of the fashions, nothing's changed in 20 years. And to some extent, I think she's kind of right. Fashion hasn't really done anything interesting since like the 90s. So, and on the one hand, if you're looking for vintage clothes because everything now is made so cheaply and poorly that you want something that's not going to fall apart right away, it's not hard to go and find old stuff from, say, the 90s that holds up better, and you don't look out of place wearing it, right? But I found it interesting. She got me thinking, and I think about this a lot.
Would not think of ancient Rome.
I think about ancient Rome more than the average woman, I will admit, but not in a weird way.
Not in a weird way.
There are places where like design and art movements just feel like they hit the end of the 20th century and they just kind of got stuck. Like, there's even a movement called Stuckism that talks about this. But like, I feel like that's true. And so when you look at something like this movie and you look at the over the top interior design of this house, yeah, it looks weird and dated and everything, but there's a part of me that looks at it and just goes, well, my God, but at least it looks like something.
Yeah.
So I loved the interior of their house. Would I want to actually live with that all the time? No. I'm very happy just to have an old clock radio that somebody gave me in 1987 called a pajammer. Yeah. And I still have it, and I should take a picture of it and post it because it is a very 1980s looking clock radio. Yeah. And it's not the GE clock radio, the brown one that everybody thinks of. No, this thing is like gray and pink and turquoise. It is a very 1980s colors. It's great.
I was just thinking about how specifically dated this house is. This wouldn't show up in any Columbo episode.
No.
Because Columbo ended in the 70s, started back in the 90s, late 80s, 90s. And it's like it just missed this.
Yeah.
just by a few years. This was so dated right away.
Yeah, by 1990, I don't think you would have seen a whole lot that looked like this.
Yeah.
But a little bit. I take that back. The opening credits sequence, they were still doing stuff like this in 1990. But yeah, in terms of house decor, nobody ever lived like this. This was not a thing. Should it have been a thing? I don't know, man. That was a very uncomfortable looking chair. So she's been kidnapped and she's being held and he's not going to pay the ransom.
In fact, while they're describing the terms, you can see him getting happier and happier. It's
just
such a great scene. Yes.
Yeah, his delight at the idea that he's never going to pay these people, and they keep knocking down the price.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, he's getting blackmailed by his mistress. But here's the thing: he doesn't know. He doesn't know he's getting blackmailed. So they think they're going to catch him murdering his wife. What they actually catch is the chief of police having sex with a sex worker, and they videotape it. And the thing is, Bill Pullman is so dumb. He thinks that her screams are from terror and that she's being murdered. And of course,
he's I can't watch.
And of course, that's not what's happening. So he takes the tape and he's like, I've got a tape of the murder because he doesn't know what Danny DeVito looks like. He gives it to the mistress and the mistress sends it on to...
She tries to watch it. He's like, I can't watch it. And both of them are kind of dopes about it.
They're very dumb.
Yeah.
And look, this is a very dumb plot, but this is the kind of movie where you can...
But it's like a 1930s plot.
Exactly.
These are the third level characters, and we don't think much about them.
Right. These are these are the third string dopes.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
It's the C plot line.
It really is. It is totally the C plot line, except that it does become relevant because they send the tape to him, and he thinks it's just like a sex tape that she sent him to get him.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this to you.
Yeah. And so she freaks out, and so then she sends the tape to the chief of police, having not watched it, and saying, you have to do something about this or else. And he thinks he's being blackmailed.
Yeah.
And so because he thinks he's being blackmailed, he goes to investigate the kidnapping as if it's a murder. Yeah. Because they also find chloroform that he was going to use to drug Bette Midler and stuff, which he never got around to because she was already kidnapped.
But also because the mistress doesn't believe that she's been kidnapped. She thinks that he actually did kill her.
Right.
Yeah, and this is...
The plot is convoluted.
Yeah.
Okay, look, the plot is very convoluted. If I tried to explain the ins and outs of it,
Yeah, it's like a Thin Man plot.
Exactly. Yeah. It is like a Thin Man plot. And one of my favorite things is if you go and watch the first of the Thin Man, and you should because it is a delightful movie. It is so much fun. It's, Nick and Nora Charles, he's a detective, she is a socialite, and they live in, it's the 1930s, and they spend all of their movies basically drunk and solving mysteries. And you get to the end of the first movie, and they do the Agatha Christie thing of we're going to gather everybody together and I'm going to reveal the murderer at a dinner. And I love there's a moment where they're like, do you know who the murderer is? He's like, actually, I'm not sure. I'm just hoping something happens when I gather them together. Yeah. It's such a good movie. But yeah, those movies have kind of convoluted plots. All mysteries, noirs, they all have convoluted plots. And this basically has a convoluted plot about the kidnapping because, you've got the kidnapping and, who knows, some people think she's dead and now he's being investigated. And so now he wants it to actually come forward that there is a kidnapping so that he's at least not wanted for murder. And so, yeah, all this stuff happens. And, I could get into the intricacies of the plot, but the point is, it's really funny. Like,
Yeah.
this is a really funny movie where, towards the end, she becomes friends with the kidnappers. There's a great sequence, by the way, because she has nothing to do but hang out in this basement, that she gets like really obsessed with exercising. Now, on the one hand, yeah, am I thrilled with I'm obsessed with my weight plot? No. But I will say the training sequence is right up there with Rocky IV. I mean, she is making weights out of like paint buckets. She is doing all kinds of like crazy like aerobics.
It seems like that's what Bette Midler is for in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like she is like the Oprah Winfrey of the 80s or something. Where
I'm pretty sure Oprah Winfrey was the Oprah Winfrey of the 80s.
Well, I mean that like she's a regular woman, as opposed to,
Yeah, that's always weird to me. This idea that she's supposed to be this like fat, ugly stand-in for regular women as opposed to Melody Griffith or somebody. And it's like, Bette Midler, she was A, not overweight, and B, not ugly. So it's very weird that, that is what we're supposed to think of her as in this.
I'm just saying this is, like the same way that Hollywood thought that like Kate Winslet was a cow.
Oh, I know. Yes, exactly. It's annoying when you watch a film and, they focus on these things with somebody who is, it's not just that like, but they're already funny. You don't focus on their looks or their weight. I'm like, no, they're already good looking, right? They just don't look like the cookie cutter.
Right.
Look, this is a long-standing complaint, and I'm just saying, like, yeah, the movie indulges in this. That kind of sucks. But Bette Midler is very funny.
Yeah.
In what she does with it, though. And I really like the training sequence in the basement. Like, it is funny watching her, like, doing leg kicks while chained. Oh, it's funny. You brought up Columbo a minute ago. And there is a scene here at, I guess it's called like Tail of the Dog or something, which is a hot dog stand. Yeah. And it's like, it used to be one of those like Los Angeles landmarks. And I think the first episode of Columbo has a scene set there too. I think I saw that on IMDb. So
Murder by the Book?
Murder by the Book, yeah.
Ah, okay.
According to IMDb.
Huh.
Yes. So I don't know. We'd have to go back and watch that. Now, is that the one that's actually directed by Spielberg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. With what's his name? One of the best. Jack Cassidy is the bad guy.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one other thing. Okay, so Judge Reinhold starts calling Danny DeVito, trying to get him to pay the ransom and stuff, and they get into arguments about this. And there's a whole thing where it's like, do you love your wife? And all that. Here's the thing. As I was watching this, all of a sudden I realized I've seen these scenes before. Do you know where I've seen them?
Where?
The Simpsons.
Really?
Like everything else, it's The Simpsons.
Huh.
So here's the thing. I didn't realize it, until I was watching this. But if you go back and watch the episode where Rodney Dangerfield is Mr. Burns' son.
Oh, yeah.
Listen to the way Homer talks and the questions he asks. It's the same questions. They were obviously referencing ruthless people. And if you remember, Mr. Burns does not want to pay the ransom for his son. I had no idea that the plot of that episode came from this movie.
Well, there you go.
The end of the film is he's trying to get DeVito to pay. DeVito doesn't want to pay, but if he doesn't show that there is actually a kidnapping, he's going to go to trial for murder. So he agrees to a handoff, and then, of course, he ends up trying to double cross the handoff because as far as he's concerned, well, now you've got a kidnapper and I can just keep the money. So it doesn't work. They go on a police chase. They go on a very slow police chase. They go on a police chase so slow I thought OJ was driving his car.
Because he's driving like a Pinto. And
he's driving a Pinto and he ends up driving off the Santa Monica Pier. And it turns out they did a body switch with a guy who, in the middle of the movie, they do this very weird little scene where there's like a serial killer who's going around and he breaks into their house and they accidentally kill him. Yeah. So they set up this whole convoluted thing of the...
See, I thought that Bette Midler was going to karate chop him or something, but...
No, they just... He went head first down into a... Yeah. So they put his body into the car as if it was the driver, and Judge Reinhold is wearing scuba gear. The car goes into the ocean, and the money goes... It looks like the money goes everywhere, and people start jumping into the ocean to grab it. And meanwhile, he's just like on the bottom of the ocean floor with a briefcase full of money. Yep. And Danny DeVito gets in trouble for
Well, see, like they took Danny DeVito for everything.
So he's left with nothing. He's reunited with Bette Midler, who promptly decides to kick him off the pier.
Yeah.
And she goes off with...
After he says, like, oh, you look better. You've lost weight. And then...
And that's her reason to then throw him in the ocean.
Yeah.
Which, fair enough.
Yeah.
The three of them, her and her kidnappers, go off into the sunset to start up a fashion line. And that's it.
Yep.
You know what we forgot? The dog.
Yeah. She has this dog named Muffy.
It's a little poodle, of course, because it's the 80s.
The poodle, of course, hates Danny DeVito. He hates the poodle, and he tries to shoot the poodle while the cops are there.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it just went off. And
But so he ends up buying a Doberman pinscher to essentially eat the dog.
Yep.
So, of course, what happens is the dogs become friends. But you had mentioned something.
In the 80s, like, Doberman pinschers were the bad dogs. Like,
Yeah.
they were the most evil dogs there were or something. And then it was like pit bulls in the 90s. And was it something else? Was it English boxers or something?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I forget. But yeah, it always seems to change. And you were saying, like German shepherds before, were the Nazi dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always like, here's what the dangerous type of dog is now.
Yeah.
And, sometimes there's a racialized component to it. If this particular dog is very popular with a minority, like then it gets associated with like being a dangerous dog and crime. At least that's kind of like how the pit bull thing seemed to go. But yeah, like American culture, there's always the dog that's super dangerous and you can't trust and is going to rip your throat out at any minute. And in the 80s, yeah, I guess it was a Doberman pinscher. It was not the pit bull though at the time because we had Spuds MacKenzie, and you wouldn't make a beer spokesman out of a dangerous dog, would you? No, he's a party animal. So yeah, the whole idea that it was the pit bull was dangerous didn't come along until the 90s. It was all Doberman pinschers.
Oh, so this is Touchstone.
Yeah, so this is back when Disney was making movies for adults, and there are a lot of movies that were Touchstone back in the day. I don't think it exists anymore as like a what would you like? It's not a label, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But this came out the same year as Ernest Saves Christmas.
Oh God, was that Touchstone as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
and that was one of the first ones. Remember, it was filmed on Disney property.
Yeah, it was. It's true.
Yeah, it was like filmed all in Orlando or something, or mostly in Orlando.
Well, this was all filmed in L.A., thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is also a much better movie than Ernest Saves Christmas, honey. This is far better. No.
At its moment.
Dennis, you can't compare this movie to Ernest Saves Christmas. This movie is really funny. I have not laughed so hard watching a movie for the show that did not involve like blood and guts as I have with this in a long time. This was great. So that was Ruthless People, starring Danny DeVito, Bette Midler, Judge Reinhold, Helen Slater. Anita Morris was Carol, the mistress. Bill Pullman. William G. Schilling, which I didn't mention, he was the police commissioner who was getting blackmailed. He's a guy you see in a lot of movies. So, and the other person I didn't bring up that has a small role in this is Gary Riley, who plays a heavy metal kid trying to buy a stereo, and I know him from the movie Summer School. Unfortunately, we'll never be able to cover Summer School for this podcast, but I watched that movie a lot when I was a teenager.
Yeah, you've talked about that before.
Yeah, that movie was great. Sorry, well, I'm afraid we'll never get to cover it. Written by Dale Launer. Written by Dale Launer and directed by Jim Abrams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker, or better known as the Zucker brothers and Jerry Abrams, or whatever, Zaz.
Yeah.
So this movie, seek it out. It is fun.
Yeah.
So,
and it was successful too. It made like
it was a huge hit. Yeah. Like I had no idea. Like this is one of those comedies that I just feel like I should have seen by now, and I just never did. I never avoided it, but I just never saw it, and I'm really shocked because this kind of is hitting on all sides.
Did you see this story about how DeVito called Bette Midler twice when it opened to congratulate her, and the second time they were both like This is going to ruin our careers.
Well, they were wrong. This was huge.
Yeah.
So you can follow us on social media. We are Mary VS Movies on Twitter, Mary VS Movies on Blue Sky, Mary VS Movies on Instagram, Mary VS Movies on Threads, Mary VS Movies at mas.to on Mastodon, Mary versus the Movies on Tumblr, and yeah, we don't have a website yet, but it's coming, probably. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe next year.
Should we keep mentioning it? Or
Yes, we're going to keep mentioning it until it's finally out there. Because it's just one more light under my butt to keep trying to work on it. And yeah.
Okay.
So.
Sure.
We don't got to say it like that. All right. Yes. We're available on all of the major platforms. We are on Apple Music, where you can rate and review the show, and we would really appreciate it if you did. We are on Spotify, where you can rate the show. I don't think you can actually review them. We are on Google Play, Overcast, pretty much anywhere that you can get an RSS feed, podcatcher, whatever. We're out there, okay? As far as I know. Let's see, what else? We have a Patreon where you can help support the show. And because this show does cost money to make, we had to rent this movie. We have to pay for the server to host the show. We have to pay for a Zoom account to have guests. Hopefully we'll start having some more guests now that, we've moved and we kind of have a better setup for recording in the house. And what else? So we have a Patreon, $3 a month. You help support the show. We can send you buttons and stickers and all the rest of it. But also, you will get access to our secondary show, Hollywood Avalon, where we watch movies that are Arthurian in theme. So it's everything from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which of course is about the Holy Grail, to The Kid Who Would Be King, which is, kind of a fun kids movie, Arthurian. To King Arthur Was a Gentleman, a British war propaganda film set back in the 1940s. So our next film that will come out hopefully very, very soon. It should have already come out by now, but, well, things just... I'm going to blame the Phillies for this one. Yeah. The next film coming out will be the Jerry Bruckheimer 2004... It's not an epic. It sucks. King Arthur.
It's not an epic.
I hate this movie, and I can't wait to cover it.
Words.
I don't walk out of movies. I stick them out to the end, but I was tempted with this one. I hate this movie so much, but I can't wait to talk about it.
I kind of dislike the Robin Hood one a little bit more.
Oh, the Robin Hood one's just boring. And also, that's not Bruckheimer. That's Ridley Scott.
Yeah. But it was kind of around the same time.
Yeah, kind of.
It was like...
It was really boring.
It was like, oh, we're going back to like those 50s epics where, we had these fun, old...
But here's the thing. When you watch, we did a 50s epic.
Yeah.
The Knights of the Round Table. And that's a colorful movie.
Yeah.
And that's a good-looking movie.
And these sucked.
Yeah, these movies are just garbage.
It's just boring, like guys in the mud.
Yes, I hate it, but I can't wait to talk about all of the things I hate about it. So if you sign up to the Patreon, which is patreon.com/MaryVSMovies, yes, you will be supporting the show. Yes, we will send you buttons and stickers and stuff like that, but you will get to hear me complain about a really stupid movie. And you will also get to hear episodes about really good movies, too.
Maybe you'll like it better this time.
I will not. I absolutely.
Keira Knightley.
I don't. Yeah, and what did they do to her on that poster? We will talk about that then. All right. So next episode, we really should have switched the order. We really should have. Look, I've been watching a lot of nuclear war movies and stuff on YouTube. I don't know. Look, the world is really dark right now. There are terrible things happening in it. So what am I doing? I'm watching movies about the end of the world.
The world is a vampire.
Sure. Thank you, Billy Corgan. So our next episode, against our better judgment, I'm going to finally sit and watch the, 1983 TV drama The Day After. So I will finally get to see what scarred all of my elder Gen X kin. Yeah. So that will be our next episode. So, all right. Until next time.
Muffy, meet Adolf. Adolf, eat Muffy.